Yeah, uh, I was going to correct that little intro video because I did use a read for it. I did put a clown face on clown face. Sorry, just been eating a tape. A clown face on KBD's face there. Will your doctrine survive the dojo? Obviously, a homage to Standing for Truth. He's going to call it his channel a debate octagon or something at some point. Anyway, a minor point. Not that he's interesting to me particularly. I don't hate the guy. Veckel apparently is going to be doing a live stream on Guess Who. More copium. Yeah. He's having another poke at Isaac probably. And you can almost, I don't like to use the word guess, at the phrases he's going to use, you know. On yeah, I can't remember. I did title the video earlier this morning. Well, not earlier this morning.
Exclusive! V was seen talking to a free gracer. Sources confirm Bill once disagreed with Bruce. Developing story, more reactions coming in by the minute.
But what is John 6:47? Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. What does that mean?
We don't have time for that. This is breaking news. So, people's opinions about one another can change?
People's opinions about one another.
Why isn't it coming up?
Step right up. Exclusive! V was seen talking to a free gracer. Sources confirm Bill once disagreed with Bruce. Developing story, more reactions coming in by the minute.
But what is John 6:47? Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. What does that mean?
We don't have time for that. This is breaking news. So, people's opinions about one another can change?
People's opinions about one another can change. That's not the issue. The real question is whether Scripture teaches what it teaches.
So you're saying changing your beliefs isn't hypocrisy?
If someone changes their view because they became more persuaded by the Bible, that's called growth, not hypocrisy.
I see.
Even I know that. Grow up, Mr. Raccoon. Stop being a sycophant for Joshua Nathan Marks Herbal. He still hasn't repented. What are you doing about it?
really, I mean, I paid for this. Like, being, now then, let's try again. Yeah, I'm sure I could have added more to that. I was going to. The point I'm making is if somebody who you think is the weakest link is even a weakest link, why are you nearly every time trying to destroy the guy? Veckle, you clown. No, that's not what we do in the body of Christ. As far as I know, anyway. Even if somebody is weak in faith, we don't try and take a dump on them all the time. And you just can't stop Veckle. Yeah, I was going to say quite a few other things, but this why on earth my stuff wouldn't play? As I said, I paid for it. Anyway, yeah, that's what because Veckle thinks that Isaac is a weak link. He is going to proceed to try and take a dump on him all the time. Well, not all the time, but it's going to be a regular thing in this community of ours. And the other thing I wanted to say, Isaac, if you ever bother listening, I doubt if you will, that's fine. Oh, I did upload this. Yeah, I was going to tell you something about
Exclusive!
this.
V was seen talking to a free gracer. Sources confirm Bill once disagreed with Bruce. Developing story, more reactions coming in by the minute.
But what is John 6:47? Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. What does that mean?
We don't have time for that. This is breaking news. So, people's opinions about one another can change?
People's opinions about one another can change. That's not the issue. The real question is whether Scripture teaches what it teaches.
So you're saying changing your beliefs isn't hypocrisy?
If someone changes their view because they became more persuaded by the Bible, that's called growth, not hypocrisy.
I see.
Even I know that. Grow up, Mr. Raccoon. Stop being a sycophant for Joshua Nathan Marks Herbal. He still hasn't repented. What are you doing about it?
Yeah, Sam, you really are a clown. Why would you even hint to Isaac or possibility? You're referring to Smokey, that Smokey hasn't repented. Who the hell are you to make claims like that, basically? You, what is he supposed to have repented about? What is it to do with you, Sam? You're not God. And why would you expect Isaac to do something uh, about Smokey apparently not repenting? Whatever that is, I don't know. The problem is with all this stuff that you've been saying about him, I'm not white knighting for him, by the way. I don't imagine for 1 second that he needs me to. I would have to believe all of you bastards over on the Free Grace channel, the pod, Bill, Rob Reed, Bruce, Andy Crap. I can't believe any of you. You can't be trusted. And the point is, really, you're having a go at Isaac there. You've depicted a little boy talking to him, implying other things. Even a little boy can correct Isaac, apparently. And yeah, obviously, people are allowed to change their mind and whatever, change mind, repent, right? So basically, you're implying, let's have a listen to it again so I get the full sort of gist of it. I saw it this morning. You, Sam, you really are an ignorant turd with a confirmation bias that you've got no information on, really. All you've got is what Rob Reed told his Bill.
Exclusive! V was seen
Have a
talking to a
listen
free
again.
gracer. Sources confirm Bill once disagreed with Bruce. Developing story, more reactions coming in by the minute.
But what is John 6:47? Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. What does that mean?
We don't have time for that. This is breaking news. So, people's opinions about one another can change?
People's opinions about one another can change. That's not the issue. The real question is whether Scripture teaches what it teaches.
So you're saying changing your beliefs isn't hypocrisy?
If someone changes their view because they became more persuaded by the Bible, that's called growth, not hypocrisy.
I see.
Even I know that. Grow up, Mr. Raccoon. Stop being a sycophant for Joshua Nathan Marks Herbal. He still hasn't repented. What are you doing about it?
Repented of what? How do you know whether he's repented of anything? It's none of your business. It's none of my business. I would never go to somebody and say, have you repented? They might well ask then, repented of what? Really, what are you on about? I know what the accusations are. I just have real problem believing any of it, especially from Sam, Bruce, Andy Cap, Bill the moron, Leonidas, Jamie Russell, who is a liar, Veckel, Kevin's Biblical Discussions, who apparently, well, he did actually, I've got the transcript, he had a debate with Smokey. In my view, if I was going to be really technical about it, I would say Kevin's Biblical Discussions lost that debate with Smokey. The very millisecond he said, or he started to call Smokey Josh, ad hominem straight away, and it was obvious. So weak, And yet, when Kevin's biblical discussions, Big Ed got booted from the Free Grace channel, the pod, he went whinging to Smokey. Oh, Smokey, the Free Graces have kicked me out, this, that, and the other. And then we hear the same thing from Tucker. Well, not here. I took a screenshot of his comment. Oh, yes, Smokey, let us let bygones be bygones. Let us collaborate together to destroy Free Grace. And yet Tucker is a Free Gracer, apparently, unless he's jumped it, I don't know. And then Jack Smack starts calling Tucker a Calvinist. Tucker starts calling Jack Smack a Calvinist. I know I heard him saying so. He might have deleted the video. I don't care. I know what I heard. I know what I read. Pathetic. Tucker. I'm not trying to tell Tucker to stick. Well, generally I would expect people to stick to their guns. You know what I mean. So why is Isaac being made responsible, as it seems from that clip, for whether Smokey repented or not? I genuinely, the sole intent, it seems, in sort of destroying his confidence. And by the way, Isaac, do you know one of the reasons I think that they're slagging you off and all that? It's not necessarily a warning to you. I don't think that they care about you in the slightest. It's more of a warning to the other Free Gracers. In other words, this is what happens when you disagree. You'll be called all sorts of garbage, ad hominems, and all that kind of thing. If their theology was sound, really would they need to do all that kind of thing? And it's up to you what you make of it. I mean, if you're going to go over to Beckel's live stream, I'm assuming he's going to do one later. That's up to you. I personally, this is just my opinion. I'm genuinely not trying to tell you what to do. I wouldn't go over there. I wouldn't bother. Let him do his dirt on you. And maybe, I don't know. It's up to you. Obviously, it's up to you. Beckel is a waste of time. The only thing he is interested in is pulling people into Calvinism. I know he's tried it with Ben. He tried it with me. He tries it with everybody. I'm not fooled by Calvinism. I know what it is. I know what it does. I don't have perfect knowledge. I've listened to Kevin Thompson a lot, at least 500 hours, a lot of his stuff. Some of those videos I've listened to twice. I've read 3 or 4 books on it. Dave Hunt's book, 1 or 2 others. Yeah, honestly, I don't know what to say to you. It's up to you, of course it is. I personally wouldn't go over there. I mean, I would say you're wasting your time. Beckel is going to do a live stream. It will probably last, I don't know, on average, about 3 hours. And all that's going to happen, I'm he'll just try and use you with his sound effects. Sam, I can't believe, to get back to the subject of Sam, what he's apparently expecting of Isaac. Let's play it again. I know one of you are watching. I mean, he's pathetic. Pathetic. Why is it anything to do with Isaac, whether Smokey repents or is likely to repent or needs to repent? Are you God or something, Sam? What do you think you are? I'm going to look into the implications of your little short video here. I don't think it's going to be absolute proof of anything. But the way it comes across there is your final sort of attack on Isaac. Well, let's listen to it again.
Exclusive! V was seen talking to a free gracer. Sources confirm Bill once disagreed with Bruce. Developing story, more reactions coming in by the minute.
But what is John 6:47? Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. What does that mean?
We don't have time for that. This is breaking news. So, people's opinions about one another can change?
People's opinions about one another can change. That's not the issue. The real question is whether Scripture teaches what it teaches.
So you're saying changing your beliefs isn't hypocrisy?
If someone changes their view because they became more persuaded by the Bible, that's called growth, not hypocrisy.
I see.
Even I know that. Grow up, Mr. Raccoon. Stop being a sycophant for Joshua Nathan Marks Herbal. He still hasn't repented. What are you doing about it?
What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Apparently, he still hasn't repented. He hasn't met Sam's so-called standards. What on earth? And I'm not white knighting for Isaac or Smokey. Smokey certainly doesn't need it. Right. Isaac, well, I'm not going to comment on that. I certainly do not think that Isaac is responsible for... I mean, how was Isaac supposed to know one way or the other what Smokey is apparently supposed to repent of? Give me a break. Sam, you fool. You cretin. You're not as theologically sound as you think. It's like, I mean, Bruce and Bill, they've had disagreements over the last 4 or 5 years. I know, I was there. I mean, you tell me anybody that Bruce hasn't had an argument with. He's more like Ben than anybody else. Bruce and Bill. No, but only, I mean, Jez. He's almost, well, I'm not going to say he's retarded. He's not totally stupid. He goes against his own doctrine. Bill, I've got the video and I've got a recording of his comment and this, that, and the other. And Ben was in there when Andy Capp was slagging me off, implying that I'm not saved. Ben didn't say a word. I've got the clip, Ben. I've got the clip. No big deal. I know what I know. I know what I heard. So who are you, Sam? Oh, Josh hasn't repented yet. Well, who's Josh? I've got to believe you, Sam. Sorry, I can't do it. I don't trust you. I know Smokey slags me off. He hates everybody that doesn't agree with him. Oh, that's not true, actually. I don't think I hate anybody. I probably despise most of you. I'll tell you 2 people at the moment that I do not despise. One of them is definitely Isaac. And yeah, I've had a poke at him. I've slagged him off a little bit here and there. Mainly because he spent too much time on those people who are actually wasting his time. They're not trying to, I don't know, edify him. I'm not. I wouldn't say edify so much as I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like I suggested that Tony Cato go and have a conversation with him, and that was months ago on Discord, 6 or 7 months ago, because I think he has got patience, and I still think he does. But I don't follow the problem is though, even though he's got patience and he's a brother, he's saved, I still think he's a two-faced shit. Tony Cato, if that's you there, I haven't read the comment yet. I can see there's a comment in the side chat. I still think he's a two-faced shit, just like Free Grace Frank, Tom, Dude and Olive, Veckel. I'll just reiterate, if that is Isaac there, the only reason that they're having a go at you, Isaac, and certain others like Jack Smack, they use him to warn the other free gracers. If you disagree, if you go against us, we'll treat you like garbage. And that's what they've been doing for 5, maybe 6 years, could be a bit longer. Smokey will probably tell you it's more like 8 or 9 years. I was there when Sparrow got kicked out. Gavin Hurley. So I have been around it. That doesn't make me an expert. I'm just giving my opinion at the moment. Take it or leave it, whichever. I don't hate you, Isaac. I don't hate any of you, actually. But there's quite a few of you that I do despise. And they're mainly in the Free Grace crew. It's not that I don't have sympathy or empathy or things like that. Just that, I mean, I don't know whether I could help in some way, be of assistance. I certainly don't want to be a hindrance. And I won't be taking the mickey out of you again, Isaac. I've thought about it and I've considered it, you know. I don't, I'm not keen. I'm not keen on my own behaviours. Isaac. Oh, I can't read it. I mean, they should have more contrast between on the words. Between the text and the background. They make grey text and then, oh, I hate this. I mean, if I could just, because the internet is useful, very tempted to just forget internet altogether in some way and just do my own thing, forget live streaming, and just let you tear each other apart. Well, not let you, but like, the Baptist rocker. Oh yeah, piss off. Knob. Anyway, Isaac, I don't know what you're planning on doing. You're probably having a burger at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope I've made my point clear. I don't believe in, I mean, if somebody is the weakest link, hopefully you'll pass this on to him. I don't think he's going to come over anyway. Right. To Isaac, known by God. I did tag him. I've tagged quite a few other people. If there's a weakest link in the chain, the last thing you do, the last thing we're supposed to be doing is smashing it apart and like trying to cut it out and replace it with another link. That's just not the way the body of Christ works. It's not how God works. It's not how Jesus works. Certainly isn't how the Holy Spirit does things. Not that I'm an expert on what the Holy Spirit does or doesn't do. If there is I mean, most people when they get saved within a, I mean, they are weak, and they should be prayed for, and they should be supported, encouraged by brothers and things. Certainly not destroy them. And that's what they're doing, really, these free gracers. That's why they make me want to puke. I'm not joking. Take it any way you want. I think I've seen you, Baptist rocker, over on the Free Grace channel. So you can tell them what I think of them. I think even if they are saved, I just think they're rats on a sinking ship using garbage Free Grace theology, so-called. I'm not a Free Gracer. I never have been. I got saved before I even heard of Free Grace. And yeah, that's a minor point. Sam, you need to stop thinking you're God or something. Unless you think Isaac's God. Oh yeah, Sam's done another video. The Free Gift Inspection Department. Yeah, well, you're inspecting another person's repentance, so-called, aren't you? I'm going to change the colour on this. I've got an app that lets me change colours so I get a better contrast with. I'm going to play a video for you. Oh, the Baptist rockers. Oh, you don't go there at all. I've seen you somewhere. Oh, well, I do apologise if I got it wrong. Perhaps I saw you. I may have seen you over on Isaac's channel. I don't know. I know I've seen you around somewhere. No big deal. I'm trying to avoid the word. I made a mistake. That's all I'm going to say. Take it or leave it. Aren't worried. So I'm going to play a couple of videos here. I saved the tab. This woman here. I think she's Australian or New Zealand. She's quite pretty, I suppose. Yeah. But when it comes to truth bombs, this woman is brutal. If I was 20 or 30 years younger, I would marry her in a heart as well. Oh yeah. Anyway, Isaac, I say God bless you. May the Lord be with you. And if you do go over to Beckles, I don't know what to say to you. Just be ready for the garbage, trickery, and verbiage that he's going to be coming out with. I do not count Veckel as a brother, by the way. I don't. I know what Calvinism is. I know what it does. I know what the games are. I'm learning more. Well, not more and more every day, but like, I'm not unaware of it, what it is. That's all I'll say. There's other people that will tell you, be careful with those Calvinists. Kevin's Biblical Discussions, that bootlicker for Veckel will be over there probably, if they do live stream that tonight. Honestly, it's pathetic. Share screen. I hope you this morning, I can't remember what time, just before midday. Not that it matters, not that it's relevant. I'll put the links in the side chat there. I'll probably put the link in again now. Just make sure this is on screen. Add to stage. Just hope it goes up. I'll make sure my speakers still. Oh, come on. What's going on here? It's buffering. I paid for this and it's buffering on me. What the hell? And it's not an upload up into my live stream studio. Certainly isn't. Let's just put this colour thing normal so I can see it normal. I've altered the contrast with an online app, so it's easier. You get a better contrast between the text and the background. This video is called, well, let's have a read of this comment before I start. In fact, I'm going to read the comments from my mobile phone. Yeah, the free gift inspection department, so-called Sam, Uncle Sam, you rat. Yeah, why? Why? Grow up, man. What's Isaac supposed to do about whether somebody's repented or not? Really? Oh yeah, I've got to do that Proverbs video. Why isn't that showing up as live? I don't know, do you? And look at that. Buffering again. I'm beginning to really hate internet. Oh, you was in a Bible study group with Brian. Well, I wouldn't that way. Those folks have shipwrecked his faith. And I'm not sure what you mean. You were in a Bible study group with Brian and he didn't start off that way. What way? Those folks have shipwrecked his faith. You should enjoy this since you're an American. I don't know. I wouldn't be so sure of that. Video. Oh, even though you're an American. I've listened to this woman this morning. She's not lying. She is a bit brutal. I could say a lot worse. I'm sure I could if I sat down and thought about it. My speaker's gone off. Yeah, I'm going to get a new speaker. I keep saying that.
Sorry, your speaker is not connected. Line in mode.
Right, let's play. I should enjoy this because I'm an American. Yeah, all right. Knob.
Got to this. For our regular viewers, this video is going to be a departure from our usual death-related. Our children are collateral damage of your unregulated capitalism and your bought legislator. Your country starts all these bloody wars, often just for shits. Our children are collateral damage of your unregulated capitalism and your bought legislator. Your country starts all these bloody wars, often just for shit. Our farmers cannot afford to run their equipment. We are paying in real money for an education system that was broken on purpose hundreds of years ago that is not ours. You are exhausting. You are genuinely, relentlessly, completely exhausting. We did not
choose
to become experts in American grief. Yeah, let's go back a few hundred years and let me explain how we got to this. For our regular viewers, this video is going to be a departure from our usual death-related content, but as you will have noticed, critical thinking is something exactly what there's everyone who has ever asked.
Oh, I'm sick of the buffering. I hate internet. Bloody hell. Oh, well, let me just get rid of some of these tabs. I'll try and get them back later.
Is it optional? It is for everyone who sees the
What's gone on now?
brain rot coming out of the US day after day and
Oh my.
genuinely wondering why. It is for everyone asking how a nation of 335 million people ended up with the biggest village idiot on the planet as president. Since that brain rot is now affecting our kids and
Yeah, keeping up, I'm kicking you. I don't want your comments in my side chat, you rat, you moron, you cretin. Absolute cretin you are.
that village idiot is actively affecting our lives, many of us outside the US are demanding an explanation. I too wanted an answer to these questions, and since I love to research anything and everything, this became the rabbit hole that I went down over the past few months. What I found is too important not to share, and it's a 250-year-old story. The first half of this video explains to the international community how America got itself into this mess. And the second half explains to Americans why the international community is done being diplomatic about how we feel about it. Buckle up, it's going to be a long, bumpy ride. Part 1. What is critical thinking and why does it matter? Since that is what this video is essentially about, let's define it. Critical thinking is not about being clever or contrarian or difficult. It is the ability to evaluate a claim before accepting it, to ask where that information comes from, who benefits from you believing in it, whether that evidence actually supports the conclusion, and whether you would an argument if it came from the other side. It is, at its core, the ability to change your mind when the evidence feels the consequences are not abstract. Distinguish between a credible source and a fabricated one. They make medical, financial, and political decisions and easy to turn against people who are harming them. They distrust the people who are trying to help them, and they can be convinced that all covers the school system, the media, the exported dysfunction, the slide towards authoritarianism is what happens without this skill as part of your culture. Keep that in mind as we go forward. One more thing before we go further, because someone will make the comment if we don't bring it up. This video is not arguing that Americans are stupid. 335 million people have the same range of IQ, the same capacity for brilliance, the same capacity for analytical thought. Some of the most rigorous thinkers, scientists, journalists, and critics in the world are American. What this video is arguing is that a system was deliberately built to prevent a very, very large portion of the population from developing and using the skills of critical thinking, self-awareness, and emotional intelligence, and that is a very different claim. And if you genuinely think all Americans are stupid, you are clearly deficient in critical thinking skills yourself, so you might not want to throw stones. Part 2, the founding. Let's start with a statement that sounds provocative, but is, on examination, simply accurate. The United States of America is the only known country in the world throughout history that was deliberately, structurally, ideologically, from the ground up, founded on anti-intellectualism. Not a country that tried to revoke knowledge, a country that had anti-intellectualism written into its founding. That shit crazy, but it does answer a lot of questions. Anti-intellectualism, if you want a formal definition, that educated people are probably trustworthy than evidence and analysis, that the person who has spent 30 years studying a subject has less credibility than the person who read about it on their phone on Tuesday. Most countries have many of whom were religious communities that left Europe specifically because they found it too tolerant, enlightened, and intellectually opened. They were not fleeing oppression so they could build a society of free inquiry. They were fleeing because they wanted to build a society where the truth was already settled by God, by scripture, by community elders, and it was not up for debate. Now, yes, the founding fathers, some of them were genuinely brilliant. Jefferson, Madison, Franklin, Hamilton, educated, widely read, deeply influenced by European Enlightenment thought. But here's what the mythology leaves out. Those men were the elite. Wealthy, travelled, multilingual, large portions of political force arise with the rise of populist democracy in the early 19th century. The idea that any ordinary man was just as qualified to govern as a trained statesman. That book learning was a form of corruption, that educated people were probably up to something. Andrew Jackson, America's 7th president, built his entire political celebrated for it. He is
Right, I'm having problems. Yeah. I've hidden keeping up because he's literally a prime example of stupidity. What she is saying is actually incorrect. Oh, is it? Yeah. What a clown, honestly. I could easily debate her. Click on it. Go and contact her on her channel. Read properly. And the English is garbage. They think they're speaking. Right, as I was saying, News Unit, who reads the King James Bible, the American Dictionary of the English language to comprehend King James English. The guy's a fool. Oh, wait, he's American. Yeah, a minute away and I'm going to upload it into my studio and I'm still going to play it. I play it from the beginning. I've heard. Now, the Baptist rocker, if you want to debate that woman, let's scroll up and check the links. Right, it's just downloading now. I can get rid of that tab. I will do in a minute anyway. And then I'm going to upload the full video. I can see your comments. Yeah, you're so clever. You're an American. Manifest destiny. Go and debate her then. Go contact her and see if she'll debate you. You preach and teach from the KJV. I can almost guarantee that you use the American Dictionary of the English language like a clown. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't know what half of the words meant. Yeah, you got to go to work. Good riddance. Good riddance. Seriously. Now then, let's upload a video file. I don't know why my internet it's gone dodgy today. I mean, that is just it is do again tomorrow. What's going wrong with it? Yeah, you get to work. I'm not reading any more of your comments because I really haven't got time for you. I don't expect you to agree with everything this woman says. The fact is, she's not. I mean, she wasn't. It's relative, isn't it? How many? I mean, the education system, it's so obvious that it's messed up the Americans over there. I mean, really bad. And I'm not kidding. I've been on the receiving end of American stupidity for quite a while now. It's not something I would say just for the sake of it. I really wouldn't. Yeah, I've seen lots of examples of American stupidity online, on YouTube. But so unbelievably
your
stupid,
unregulated
arrogant,
capitalism and
really
your
quite
bought
silly.
legislator. Your country starts all these bloody wars, often just
Let me just pause it there because why isn't the audio
for
coming
shits
through on
and
it?
giggles. The village idiot is president and it is landing on us. Our farmers cannot afford to run their for an education system that was broken on purpose.
Hold on. Hold on. Why isn't the audio
House.
down?
You are exhausting. You are genuinely relentless.
Oh, this is so frustrating. This shouldn't be a problem. Why on earth?
Our children are collateral damage of your unregulated capitalism and your.
Let me upload it again. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's almost as though the internet is designed to annoy everybody. Literally. I'm not kidding. I think some of you might agree. Yeah. Let's try again. Crikey. I might just give up because it's getting me all sweaty and it's getting annoying. Getting annoying.
your unregulated capitalism and your bought legislator. Your country starts
Why is it
not afford to run their equipment. We are paying in real money for an education system that was broken on purpose.
Oh, I'm getting rid of it. I just haven't got patience now. I can't. How many times have I got to upload it? I'm going to share screen. Get off. Right, I'll make sure. Right. Let's try again.
Our children are collateral damage of your unregulated capitalism and your bought legislator. Your country starts all these bloody wars, often just for shits and giggles. The village idiot is president and it is landing on us. Our farmers cannot afford to run their equipment. We are paying in real money for an education system that was broken on purpose hundreds of years ago. That is not ours. You are exhausting. You are genuinely, relentlessly, completely exhausting. We did not choose to become experts on American politics and American shootings, American culture wars, and American grief. Yeah, let's go back a few hundred years and let me explain how we got to this. For our regular viewers, this video is going to be a departure from our usual death-related content, but as you will have noticed, critical thinking is something we strongly advocate on this channel, and that is exactly what this video is about. It is for everyone who has ever asked themselves, does the US even have an education system? Is it optional? It is for everyone who sees the brain rot coming out of the US day after day and genuinely wondering why. It is for everyone asking how a nation of 335 million people ended up with the biggest village idiot on the planet as president. Since that brain rot is now our lives, many of us outside the US are demanding an explanation. I too wanted an answer to these questions, and since I love to research anything and everything, this became the rabbit hole that I went down over the past few months. What I found is too important not to share, and it's a 250-year-old story. The first half of this video explains to the international community how America got itself into this mess. And the second half explains to Americans why the international community is done being diplomatic about how we feel about it. Buckle up, it's going to be a long, bumpy ride. Part 1. What is critical thinking and why does it matter? Since that is what this video is essentially about, let's define it. Critical thinking is not about being clever or contrarian or difficult. It is the ability to evaluate a claim before accepting it, to ask where that information comes from, who benefits from you believing in it, whether that evidence actually supports the conclusion, and whether you would accept the same argument if it came from the other side. It is, at its core, the ability to change your mind when the evidence demands it. That is it. That is the whole thing. When a population lacks critical thinking skills, the consequences are not abstract. People cannot identify when they are being lied to. They cannot distinguish between a credible source and a fabricated one. They make medical, financial, and political decisions based on what feels true rather than what is demonstratively true. They are easy to turn against each other. They vote against their own interests. They trust the people who are harming them, convinced that all of the above is actually freedom. Every single thing this video covers, the school system, the media, the exported dysfunction, the slide towards authoritarianism, is what happens without this skill as part of your culture. Keep that in mind as we go forward. One more thing before we go further, because someone will make the comment if we don't bring it up. This video is not arguing that Americans are stupid. 335 million people have the same range of intelligence as any other population on Earth, the same distribution of IQ, the same capacity for brilliance, the same capacity for analytical thought. Some of the most rigorous thinkers, scientists, journalists, and critics in the world are American. What this video is arguing is that a system was deliberately built to prevent a very, very large portion of the population from devotional intelligence, and that is a very different claim. And if you genuinely think all Americans are stupid, you are clearly deficient in critical thinking skills yourself, so you might not want to throw stones. Part 2, the founding. Let's start with a statement that sounds provocative, but is, on examination, simply accurate. The United States of America is the only known country in the world throughout history that was deliberately, structurally, ideologically, from the ground up, founded on anti-intellectualism. Not a country that tried to revoke knowledge, a country that had anti-intellectualism written into its foundational code. That is genuinely batshit crazy, but it does answer a lot of questions. Anti-intellectualism, if you want a formal definition, is a hostility towards or distrust of intellectuals, intellectual pursuits, and expertise. The idea that knowledge is suspicious, that educated people are probably up to something, that gut feeling and common sense are more trustworthy than evidence and analysis, that the person who has spent 30 years studying a subject has less credibility than the person who read about on their phone on Tuesday. Most countries have pockets of anti-intellectualism. It exists everywhere to some degree. What makes America categorically different is that anti-intellectualism was not a reaction to its founding institutions, it was part of them. It was present at its creation, and it was useful to the people doing the creating. You are uniquely special, just not in the way you thought you were. The dominant story America tells itself is the story of the self-made man, the rugged individualist who didn't need schooling, didn't need experts, didn't need anyone's help, just grit, faith, and common sense. This archetype goes back to the very earliest European settlers, many of whom were religious communities that left Europe specifically because they found it too tolerant, enlightened, and intellectually opened. They were not fleeing oppression so they could build a society of free inquiry. They were fleeing because they wanted to build a society where the truth was already settled by God, by scripture, by community elders, and it was not up for debate. Now, yes, the founding fathers, some of them were genuinely brilliant. Jefferson, Madison, Franklin, Hamilton, educated, widely read, deeply influenced by European Enlightenment thought. But here's what the mythology leaves out. Those men were the elite, wealthy, traveled, multilingual, and they were mistrusted for it almost immediately by a large portions of the population they were supposedly leading. The first great organized expression of anti-intellectualism as a political force arose with the rise of populist democracy in the early 19th century. The idea that any ordinary man was just as qualified to govern as a trained statesman. That book learning was a form of corruption, that educated people were probably up to something. Andrew Jackson, America's 7th president, built his entire political identity on contempt for educated elites. He was celebrated for it. He is still on the $20 note. Wow, that is fucked up. Jesus Christ. Okay, so the soil was prepared early. What grew in it over the next 2 centuries was a culture where intelligence became something you apologized for, expertise became something you treated with suspicion, and common sense came to mean whatever you already believed before you heard the evidence. A population that distrusts expertise is a population that won't question the factory owner, the landlord, the preacher, or the politician. It is, in the most literal sense, easier to manage. Every single thing we are about to cover in this video, the school system, the media, the gun debate, the military worship, the exported dysfunction, all of it flows directly from this founding fact. Once you understand that anti-intellectualism is not a flaw of the American feature, but a feature of it, the rest stops being confusing really quickly. The school system. How to engineer a population that cannot think critically, a documented, time-stamped history. The American school system does not accidentally fail to teach critical thinking. It was structurally designed that way through a series of deliberate policy decisions spanning 2 centuries to produce something other than critical thinkers. What it was designed to produce changes slightly depending on era, but the output has been remarkably consistent. Compliant, testable, manageable people who know how to follow instructions but are not particularly equipped to question them. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's a paper trail, so let's go through it. The Prussian system, mid-1800s. In the mid-19th century, American education reformers, most prominently Horace Mann, travelled to Prussia and came back enormously impressed by what they found. The Prussian system was efficient, standardized, and produced highly disciplined graduates. American industrialists and politicians adopted it enthusiastically. What they did not advertise was what the Prussian system was actually designed to do. Not to produce curious, independent thinkers, but obedient soldiers and compliant factory workers. Children sat in rows, faced forward, memorized what the teacher said, and did not question. They received, retained, and repeated. The teacher was the authority, and the authority was never to be questioned. This model suited American industrialists perfectly. The country was industrializing rapidly. It needed workers who would show up, follow instructions, operate machinery safely, and did not organize. It did not need workers who asked why. The Prussian system delivered exactly what was required, and it became the foundational architecture of the American public education system. Much of it remains intact today. Let that sink in. The model that still shapes how millions of American children are educated was imported from 19th century Prussia specifically because it was good at producing people who follow orders. That's it. P.S. The Nazis loved that system when they inherited it. IQ testing and the eugenics agenda. 1917 to the 1930s. During the First World War, the US Army developed mass intelligence testing to produce recruits, and afterwards, psychologists led by Lewis Terman at Stanford adopted those tests to use in schools. What the history books tend to gloss over is that the IQ testing movement was explicitly and openly linked to eugenics. The point was not to identify who needed more support, it was to sort the population, to identify who was worth educating and who was not. The tests were designed by white upper-class academics saturated with cultural assumptions that made them almost impossible to perform well on if you were poor, immigrant, or black. And the results were used to track children as young as 8 into academic or vocational streams that they almost never left. By the 1930s, America had built a school system that formally sorted children by race and class, called it meritocracy, and ensured that the children who needed the analytical education the most were precisely the ones to least receive it. The eugenics movement was eventually discredited. The world saw where it led Nazi Germany, but the tracking system survived. Ability groupings remain widespread in American schools. The populations in lower tracts remain disproportionately poor and non-white. The mechanisms changed, but the outcome did not. The Red Scare, critical thinking as communism, 1950s. In the 1950s, a new threat to critical thinking arrived from a rather unexpected direction: anti-communism. The McCarthy era produced a cultural climate in which teaching children to question authority, examine evidence from multiple perspectives, or consider ideas that challenged the status quo was treated as potentially subversive, potentially un-American, potentially communist. School curricula was scrutinized for anything that looked like it might produce a child who asked inconvenient questions. Progressive education, which emphasized inquiry, debate, or independent thinking, was attacked as a vehicle of communist indoctrination. Teachers were investigated, textbooks were changed. The message delivered clearly and consistently was that the proper role of education was to transmit American values, not interrogate them. What the fuck was wrong with these people? The long-term effect of this period on American education is difficult to overstate. It created a cultural norm still present today in which teaching children to think critically about their own country, its history, and its institutions is treated as an act of disloyalty rather than an act of education. This is the direct ancestor of the current battles over what can and cannot be taught in American classrooms. No Child Left Behind, 2001. Fast forward to 2001, George W. Bush signs the No Child Left Behind Act at the most significant federal intervention in American education in decades. The stated goal was admirable. Close the achievement gap, hold schools accountable, ensure every child reached a basic proficiency in reading and maths. The mechanism was standardized testing. Schools were required to test students annually, and those that failed to meet the benchmarks faced reduced funding, restructuring, or closure, with teacher performance, school performance, and funding all contingent on the same scores. The result was entirely predictable to anyone who thought about the incentive structure for more than 30 seconds. Schools stopped teaching what was not tested. Critical thinking is not easily tested on a standardized exam. Neither is creativity, civic reasoning, ethical analysis, media literacy, philosophical inquiry, or the ability to construct and evaluate an argument. Art, music, and drama, subjects that develop lateral thinking and imaginative capacity, were cut to make room for test preparation. Schools in poor areas, already under-resourced and under pressure, became almost entirely focused on drilling students for the specific questions that they would face on the specific test that determined whether the school survived. No Child Left Behind did not close the achievement gap. What it did do, comprehensively and measurably, was to narrow the curriculum, reward repetition and memorization, punish open-ended inquiry, and produce a generation of students who were very good at answering preset questions and very poorly equipped to ask new ones. It was education restructured around compliance and measurement, which is, if you've been paying attention, exactly what the Prussian system was designed to do 150 years earlier. The law was eventually replaced by the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015, but the standardized testing culture it embedded remains. The damage to curriculum breadth, to teacher autonomy, to the place of critical thinking in American classrooms was not undone by changing the legislation. You cannot cut a decade of analytical education from a generation and fix it with a new bill. And for Australians who are about to jump in the comments, yes, we have NAPLAN, and yes, it is standardized testing, but it is administered across only 4 years of schooling, not 12. The stakes are significantly lower. It does not get teachers fired. It does not get entire schools shut down by a school board, and it has never resulted in schools spending an entire decade drilling children on test answers at the expense of everything else. It is not the same thing. It is not even close to the same thing. The structural result. The single most important structural fact about the American education today is this: there is no national curriculum. Education is controlled at the local level by elected school boards across roughly 13,000 school districts. What a child learns depends almost entirely on where they were born. A child in Texas may be taught that the Civil War was primarily about states' rights. A child in Massachusetts may be taught it was about slavery. And when they grow up and disagree, they are not being irrational. They were trained to disagree. It was built in. School funding is tied to local property taxes, meaning schools in wealthy areas are extraordinarily well-resourced and schools in poorer areas are not. And the children in most need of a decent external education are the ones the system is least likely to provide it to. The United States spends more per student than almost any other country on earth, but it consistently ranks in the middle of the pack on international assessments of actual student understanding. The money is there, the outcomes really aren't. And when you understand the history we have just covered, the anti-intellectualism, the Prussian compliance model, the eugenics tracking system, the anti-communist suppression of inquiry, the No Child Left Behind testing regime, that gap stops being a mystery. It becomes the entirely predictable result of a system that was never, at any point of its history, primarily designed to produce critical thinking. It was designed to produce people who would follow instructions. And on that matter, it has been extraordinarily successful. Part 4, adulthood. You leave school, the machinery follows you. You graduate, you know the Pledge of Allegiance by heart, but you have almost no critical thinking skills to ask why that is the case. You are now an adult. The indoctrination infrastructure of your school years is behind you. Surely now you can think for yourself. Nope. The ritual continues, it just gets bigger. The Pledge of Allegiance that you did every morning, every single morning, well, what replaces that is something more ambient and more powerful, a total saturation of national symbolism in everyday civilian life. The flag is everywhere, on porches, on bumper stickers, on clothing, on shop windows, outside car dealerships. The national anthem plays before every sporting event, from NFL games to minor league baseball and high school athletics on a Tuesday night. Military flyovers at stadiums, veteran tributes on every occasion. Thank you for your service, that's said like bless you after someone sneezes. The conditioning continues and you don't have the skills to question it. That's not a mistake. The function is identical to the pledge. It is a daily prompt, many times a day often, in many different contexts, to feel something about your country before you think anything about it. Emotion precedes analysis. Loyalty is assumed. Questioning is socially costly. The childhood ritual of compulsory patriotism becomes the adult environment of ambient patriotism, and the effect on critical thinking is the same. It makes certain questions feel like personal attacks before they've even been asked. But these rituals are not merely ambient, they are enforced. Participation is technically voluntary, but refusal is punished. And that distinction between technically voluntary and functionally compelled is exactly how authoritarian cultures operate inside a democratic framework. Copernic and Landmesser, you participate or you pay. Consider this. There is a famous photograph from 1936, a ship launch in Hamburg, hundreds of people giving the Nazi salute, and in the middle of that crowd is one man standing with his arms crossed instead. His name is believed to be August Landmesser. He refused the ritual and he was later identified, convicted, and eventually killed in a penal battalion. In 2016, Colin Kaepernick, NFL player, knelt during the national anthem at a game to protest police brutality against Black Americans. He didn't burn anything. He did not shout. He knelt quietly during a song. The response was career-ending. He was called a traitor. Death threats followed. Every NFL team declined to sign him despite his obvious ability. The President of the United States called him a son of a bitch at a political rally to cheering crowds. Now, America is not Nazi Germany. That's not the argument. The argument is this. Compelled loyalty ritual and the punishment of those who refuse them are a structural feature of authoritarian culture, regardless of which flag they are performed under. Such a small stepping out of line results with such proportionate punishment. Landmesser was destroyed by the state. Kaepernick was destroyed by the market, the league, and the political establishment. Different mechanisms, identical message. You participate or you pay. And when a ritual makes you a traitor rather than a dissenter, the ritual is no longer a symbol. The country where symbols cannot be questioned has confused loyalty with thought and made them enemies. The entertainment complex. America is always the hero. Hollywood is not a neutral storytelling machine. It is the most powerful cultural export in human history, and for decades it has operated under a consistent set of assumptions. America is fundamentally good. American foreign policy, however messy, is ultimately motivated by the right values. American soldiers are noble. American institutions are, in the end, trustworthy. The villain is foreign or domestic and unusual, never systemic, never the country itself. This is not an accident. The Pentagon's entertainment liaison
America is shit.
office has co-produced hundreds of films and television series in exchange for access to equipment and locations, with script approval as a condition. Movies that portray the US military critically do not get the aircraft carriers. Movies that portray it heroically do. The result is a cinematic landscape that has spent 70 years telling Americans and the rest of the world a particular story about who Americans are and what their country stands for. When you have absorbed that story since childhood across thousands of hours of film and television, it becomes the emotional baseline against all the other information it's measured. Facts that fit the story feel true. Facts that are contradicting feel like propaganda. This is not a conscious process. It is what happens when entertainment is used at scale over time to shape a culture's understanding of itself. Social media, the American product, American political choice, an American problem exported globally. Before we talk about what social media has done to a population, let's be clear about what it is. Social media was created by American tech giants. It was allowed to grow without restriction by the American government, who chose repeatedly and deliberately not to regulate it. The largest English-speaking user base is the American population. The algorithms that determine what billions of people around the world see every day were built in California, optimized by American engagement patterns, and reflect the American cultural assumptions about what content should be amplified and what should be suppressed. This is not a neutral global utility. It is an American product shaped by American political choices run on American values, or more accurately, on the absence of them. Information overload as a suppressor of critical thinking. Here's a mechanism that doesn't get nearly enough attention. In an environment of information abundance, hundreds of cable channels, millions of websites, social media feeds that never end, the instinctive assumption is that more information produces better informed citizens. But the opposite is closer to true. When you are bombarded with more information than you can possibly process from more sources than you can possibly evaluate, the cognitively rational response is to outsource your judgment. You cannot verify everything, you cannot assess all the sources, so you fall back on a shortcut. You trust the sources that your tribe trusts. You distrust the sources that your tribe distrusts. Information overload does not produce skepticism, it produces surrender of individual judgment to collective tribal authority. This is why the explosion of available information in the internet age has not produced more informed American public. It has produced a more confidently misinformed one. The volume of competing claims is itself a suppressor of critical thinking, because critical thinking requires time, cognitive resources, and a framework for evaluation that most Americans were never given. It is the absence of that framework. More information just means more noise, and more noise means more to retreat from to whatever your team says is right, which is why a Fox News viewer is less accurately informed on facts than someone who watches no news at all. Let that sink in. The defunding of civic and adult education. Let us say generously that someone makes it through the American school system with their curiosity intact somehow. They are now an adult and they want to learn. They want to develop the analytical skills that they were not given in school. What infrastructure exists for them? Less than there used to be, unfortunately, and far less than comparable countries. Public library funding has been cut in real terms across most of the country over the past 3 decades. Community college, the primary route to affordable further education for working adults, has been defunded in most states, with costs shifted to students. Adult literacy and continuing education programs have been cut. Civic education programs, which once existed to give adults the tools to participate meaningfully in democratic life, have largely disappeared. The message delivered by this defunding is not subtle. The infrastructure that might allow American adults to compensate for the poor school education, to develop critical thinking after the fact, to become a more informed citizen, has been systematically dismantled at the same time that the information environment has become more complex and more manipulative. Epistemic tribalism, the end state. All of the above produces reliably and predictably a condition that researchers call epistemic tribalism. Your tribe determines what is true. Evidence that supports your tribe's position is real, credible, and important. Evidence that challenges that is fake, biased, politically motivated, or an attack on you personally. The source of the information matters more than the content. The team that produces it matters more than what is actually accurate. This is not stupidity necessarily, but an entirely rational adaptation of the mind that was never given the tools to evaluate evidence independently, has been trained since childhood to feel loyalty before thinking critically, and is now drowning in more information than it could possibly ever handle in an environment optimized to exploit tribal instincts. Given those conditions, epistemic tribalism is not a failure of intelligence, it's a survival strategy. The big problem, though, is that democracy cannot function on epistemic tribalism. A democracy requires citizens who can, at minimum, evaluate the basic factual claims, recognize when they are being misled, and update their positions to response to evidence. Epistemic tribalism makes all three of those things not just unlikely, but actively threatening to the individual's sense of identity and community belonging. Changing your mind in a tribally divided information environment means betraying your team. And most people, given the choice between truth and belonging, will choose belonging every time, because belonging kept humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years before critical thinking was even a concept. Who benefits and why there's no conspiracy required? At this point, a reasonable person asks, who actually wants this? Who benefits from a population of adults that cannot think critically? And the honest answer is that the beneficiaries are many, which makes it so much more durable. Large tech companies profit from engagement over accuracy. Outrage keeps people on the platform, and it doesn't matter to the algorithm whether the outrage is justified or not. Political parties on both sides benefit from loyal, unquestioning bases rather than genuinely independent voters who might defect on any given issue. Corporations benefit from consumers who do not scrutinize their products, their labor practices, or their environmental record. Politicians do better when fewer people vote and the ones who do are angry and loyal. Wealthy donors benefit from tax and regulatory environment that a critical thinking majority would never have voted for. Oh yeah, and one more. Who else benefits? The church. Religious organizations are among the most direct and least discussed beneficiaries of a population that was never taught to examine claims critically. Prosperity gospel is the clearest example. God rewards faith with wealth. Your poverty is a spiritual failing. Your pastor's private jet is evidence of divine favor. This collapses under 30 seconds of scrutiny. It contradicts the foundational text it claims to represent and is transparently self-serving for the person asking for the money. It survives only because critical thinking was never taught to the population at large. And then there is the individual level. In a population with strong critical thinking, a charismatic person who wants wealth and power has to compete in arenas where their claims get tested. In a population without it, pastoral ministry is one of the most efficient routes available. No qualifications required, tax-free income, a congregation preconditioned to follow authority and socially punish anyone who questions the leadership. To question the pastor is to question God. It is a near-perfect environment for narcissistic exploitation. The flock was prepared by the school system. The shepherd arrived and took advantage of it. This isn't an attack on people with faith. You do not need a naive population to have a healthy religious community, but you do need one to run a televangelical empire. The full picture. Technology companies, political parties, corporations, incumbent politicians, wealthy donors, predatory financial institutions, religious empires. None of them conspire together. All of them benefit from the same outcome, though. The school system was not designed by a conspiracy. It was shaped by industrialists, eugenicists, Cold War politicians, and standardized testing lobbyists, each pursuing their own agenda. The adult information environment was not designed by conspiracy. It was shaped by cable news executives, social media engineers, and political operatives, each pursuing their own agenda. The conspiracy theory version of this story is actually less frightening than the truth. The truth is that you do not need a conspiracy when you have aligned incentives. The machine runs itself. Part 5. What this has done to the American people and why they should be livid. This was done to you, and you deserve to be furious about it. The American people are not the villains in this story, they are the victims. And the people who did this to them did it deliberately for profit over generations. The theft of intellectual competence. Tens of millions of Americans who are perfectly capable of sophisticated thought we're taught that thinking is not for them, that gut feeling is just as valid as expertise, that the person with the library card is the suspicious one. That is not freedom. That is a con that takes your own intelligence and turns it against you. Working class Americans were told that incuriosity was their identity. The people who told them that got very, very rich. The health cost. The US has the worst health outcomes of any wealthy nation while paying more for healthcare than anywhere else on earth. A population taught to distrust medical expertise delays treatment, refuses vaccines, follows misinformation, and dies earlier than it should because it was deliberately taught to distrust the people who could have helped it. Every comparable country has universal health care, and every comparable country has better outcomes. That is not a coincidence. The financial cost. Payday lenders, for-profit colleges, predatory mortgages, multi-level marketing. These industries thrive on America specifically because critical thinking was withheld from their people they target. Young Americans were handed decades of debt for degrees whose value has already collapsed by institutions that knew this and said nothing. The political cost. Americans vote against their own interests with a consistency that baffles the rest of the world because the emotional framing was always more powerful than the policy analysis that they were never taught to do. The cruelest part is that the people most shaped by that conditioning are usually the ones defending it the hardest because admitting that was done to them means admitting that the identity they built and the community they found was constructed by people who never had their interests at heart. The social cost. When truth is determined by what team you're on, the fracturing moves into families, friendships, and communities until the social fabric tears completely. Americans report higher rates of loneliness than citizens in comparable countries. Americans did not choose to hate each other. They were put in conditions designed by people who found their divisions profitable. Why the rage is justified and where it should be directed. The rage is legitimate. It is the correct response to what has been done, but it is aimed with the extraordinary precision by people who benefit from its misdirection at immigrants, academics, journalists, and other tribes, rather than the architects of conditioning producing it. If you are American watching this and you are angry, you should be. You were robbed. And the people who robbed you have been very careful to make sure you send that anger somewhere else. Part 6, consequences and authoritarianism. Where it lands. Everything in this video has a logical endpoint, and we're at it. Democracy hollows out before it falls. The institutions remain, the elections continue, the flag still flies, but the substance drains away when the population no longer has the tools to protect it from someone who wanted to exploit it. Authoritarianism arrives as a series of individually survivable moments. A norm broken here, an institution undermined here. Each step is absorbed, and each step makes the next one easier. And a population that was never taught to recognize the pattern will dismiss warnings as partisan hysteria until it's too late. Since taking office, Trump has attacked the independence of the judiciary, defunded and dismantled federal agencies, purged the civil service of anyone not personally loyal to him, including the heads of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the senior military leadership. You know, the thing that you're so proud of and maybe the only way to get you out of this mess, the Attorney General, the senior Justice Department officials, Inspector Generals across multiple departments, and the list goes on. Declared the press the enemy of the people and used the power of executive to punish political opponents and reward allies. He has withdrawn from international institutions, torn up alliances, and openly expressed admiration for authoritarian leaders while treating democratic ones as contempt. That is not normal disagreement. This is the systematic removal of the checks and balances that prevent one person from having unchecked power. And the population that was supposed to resist this, the informed citizenry that democracy requires, was never built. Part 7. So let's be specific about why the international community is done. Your dysfunction doesn't stay at home, it travels, and we are done being polite about it. So, now we know how the US got itself into this mess that it is currently in, and many Americans finding themselves in this most difficult of moments are looking to the international community for the support and finding precious little of it. Assuming, because critical thinking was never your strong suit, that we are simply unsympathetic, that we don't care, that we've abandoned you. And if you had been taught to think critically, you might have worked out why the support has dried up. We have spent this entire video being measured and fair. We have explained the structural causes, acknowledged the systemic failures, and been careful to separate the American people from the American system. We're going to settle that aside now, because the international community has a few things that it wants to tell your narcissistic personality of a country. And it's about time that you heard the truth in a manner that a majority of you can process. Emotional, at volume, with no nuance. Buckle up, buttercup, we've got a few things that we need to get off our chest. You manufacture your own crises, perform victimhood about them, and call it everyone else's problem. The manosphere, the red pill crew, the climate denial industry, cancel culture, the incel movement, hustle culture and the self-made myth, the anti-vaccine pipeline, the do-your-own-research movement, the privilege framework weaponizing so your identity determines the validity of everything you say, the self-diagnosis culture, QAnon, academic postmodernism, the idea that objective truth is power construct, the everything is racist framework, the purity test culture where ideological perfection matters more than the actual outcome, the prosperity gospel, performative activism, changing your profile picture instead of changing anything at all, the stolen election industry, the crisis actor conspiracy, the sovereign citizen movement, the prepper and doomsday movement, the outrage economy, flat earth, the I'm being persecuted because I identify as every letter under the fucking alphabet, the wellness and radicalization pipeline. Every single one created in America by Americans serving the same damn purpose, to play the victim so the individual never has to look in the mirror, never has to take accountability or to have any responsibility. And we know you love playing the victim because from the outside it looks like a sexual compulsion. You genuinely cannot help yourself. It's like playing the victim makes you fucking horny, which makes sense coming from a nation that manages to wriggle its way out of every fucking form of accountability from everything that it has ever done, including every fucking war crime, which is a very long list. That is the whole video in and of itself. Your children have been getting shot for decades at schools. Over 400 school shootings since Columbine, and you have done nothing about it. And after all of that, a bunch of your people and your politicians actually had the balls to tell Australians that we were pathetic for giving up our guns to save our people, when you morons can't even pick up a damn book about how another country solved its problem, because that might make you less of a man. Now your billionaires are sniffing around our politics, trying to undo the gun laws that saved our children. Maybe you should put all those school shooters into your military, because they seem to love the victim mentality and the bloodlust, so they fit fucking right in. Speaking of which, our service people have dying in your wars. Here is something the international community has understood for a very long time that America doesn't seem to recognize. You are the typical cliche of a schoolyard bully. When everything is chaotic and painful at home, rather than deal with it, you go out and throw your weight around the playground. You start fights that aren't yours to start. You blow shit up. You make yourself impossible to ignore. And then when the playground hits back, and September 11 was the playground hitting back, Americans are genuinely shocked. Genuinely could not understand why anyone would want to do that, because bullies never see themselves as bullies, do they? Your country starts all these bloody wars, often just for shits and giggles or for profit or for geopolitical vanity, rarely out of any genuine necessity, even though that's what they tell you, and then pressures our government into sending our troops, many of whom come home in boxes. Then your government turns around and says that our dead soldiers meant nothing, but yours were war heroes. And yes, why the public didn't start the wars, you are constantly kissing the asses of those who signed up to be part of it, even though they knew that your government always does this, and it's never about defense, so you can't blame the just bullying orders. Meanwhile, the military worship continues, no one asks questions, there's no pressure on the government to stop it, meaning that more of your people die, more of our people die, more innocent people die. That is on you as individuals. Stop kissing asses and start asking questions. Or do you honestly love the murder? Because from the outside, that's exactly what it looks like. You exported your dysfunctional national religion. The prosperity gospel, God rewards faith with wealth, and your poverty is your spiritual failing, and your pastor's jet is divine favor, is an American theological export now bleeding communities dry around Africa, South America, and parts of Southeast Asia. People who cannot afford medicine are giving away money because the American train operator told them that God was keeping score. This is not Christianity. This is monetized exploitation model developed in America, franchised globally, running on the same absence of critical thinking that made it work back home. Pastors flying private jets over communities that cannot afford to eat. Made in America, exported worldwide. You export your dysfunction to our children. Our children are collateral damage of your unregulated capitalism and your bought legislator. The individual Americans who share this content day after day are not victims of the algorithm. They are choosing to click the post. Our kids did not go looking for this. It was pushed on them. The 13-year-old girl in Melbourne did not search content telling her that she was worthless. It found her. A 15-year-old boy in Lee did not seek out the pipeline to loneliness, to misogyny. It was recommended to him step by step because that is what the engagement metric rewarded. A 12-year-old in Lagos did not choose anti-vaccine conspiracy theories. They arrived in his language targeted to his age group because the algorithm optimized in California decided that his attention was worth more than his health. And then there's the therapeutic language export, and this really fucking gets me. America took genuine clinical concepts about trauma and mental health and exported them via social media, stripped of every bit of clinical context, and now they are being used by teenagers every year as a weapon against accountability. A teenager in Brisbane is triggered about being asked to clean their room. A teenager in Dublin is traumatized by a deadline. A teenager in Johannesburg has declared that their best friend is toxic for disagreeing with them one fucking time. Valid concepts developed to help people process genuine suffering turned into a shield against every conversation and every consequence. And it has made a generation harder to reach, easier to manipulate, and completely unprepared for adult life. That arrived through their phone from America, pushed by American content creators. Andrew Tate, Alex Jones, Josh Rogan, and behind them, thousands of smaller American creators yelling into their phones, unhinged robots desperate to seek validation from strangers who in turn pile into their comments and start screaming, also arguing about that they are absolutely right. Shocking update to all of you. No one has ever changed their mind from an argument in the comments section. Not once. What it does is keep everyone furious, keep the algorithm fed, and keep the content coming. By the way, that 48 hours that US got kicked off TikTok was the best 48 hours our feeds have seen in years. We still talk fondly about it. And now those same tech giants want to do it all again with AI. The same companies that built the platform, suppressed the research, and thought every regulation has handed our children's mental health over to the engagement algorithm. They are now racing to build artificial intelligence with zero meaningful oversight. And your government, rather than regulating them, has just forced those AI companies to produce AI military weapons and build an entire surveillance network to spy on the American people. Good job. Not every American, but always an American. And it's not just online. The international community has developed a fairly reliable instinct. When someone does something genuinely unhinged or deeply offensive in public in another country, in a place where it's not theirs, it gets filmed, it goes on social media, the international community takes one look and says, definitely an American, and we are right most of the time. The loud one demanding a manager at a restaurant in Paris, the one desecrating a site in Bali, the one screaming about their rights as a public servant in a country where those rights were never promised, caught on camera, exported globally, filed under why we have complicated feelings about this particular nation. Those are just the ones that got filmed. Not to mention the American screaming at a sales assistant in Japan for not speaking English, the American tourist telling someone in Stonehenge how everything is better in the US. Not every American, but almost always an American. You are inescapable and you have no idea. We did not choose to become experts on American politics and American shootings, American culture wars, and American grief. The algorithm and the news cycle chose that for us. We know about your city names, your political figures, your school districts. We know more about your daily life than we do about our own neighboring countries, because the American content is in every feed, every platform, every single day without a break. Your police shootings, your elections, your poverty, your outrage, relentless and inescapable, and we have never signed up for it. And here's what makes it genuine genuinely infuriating, and a significant chunk of the American population has no idea the countries that are watching this video even exist. You are everywhere in our lives and we are nowhere in yours, and still the people point the cameras at us from countries that they cannot locate on a fucking map to explain how we should handle our gun laws and run our democracies. That is not an algorithm. That is a choice, and that is a choice made with the confidence that only comes from never having been told, not once in your life, that your opinion is worthless. And it does not stop at politics. You correct someone's spelling without realizing that they're speaking British English because they're from the fucking UK, and of course you simply can't be wrong. You assume that the temperature that everyone mentions is Fahrenheit. You say what state you're in when someone asks what country you're from. You call out a photo of a summer Christmas and call it fake without even realizing that that's what happens on the southern hemisphere for half the fucking world. Your mind is the reference point for all human experience on Earth. You are exhausting. You are genuinely, relentlessly, completely exhausting, and you have no idea. And now we are paying for your mess with our economies. The village idiot is president and it is landing on us. Our farmers cannot afford to run their equipment. Our workers cannot afford to drive to work. Our businesses are eating the cost for decisions made by Washington, by people elected by a population that was deliberately, systemically stripped of all thinking skills that might have stopped it. We are paying in real money for an education system that was broken on purpose hundreds of years ago that is not ours. The system produced the voter, yes, but the voter still voted, or who couldn't even be fucking bothered to turn up. And either way, that bill came to us. Do you understand now? That is why we are furious. That is why the international community has no sympathy for you in your current situation. Your country has shown again and again that it has no desire to fix its own problems and does not give a shit about anyone else but itself. One last thing, and this one's personal. To our American viewers, this video was not made to kick you while you're down. If you are here, you probably already have the critical thinking skills that we've been talking about. People without them don't tend to go looking for this content. You're likely just as furious about all this as we are, and I see you. But the international community is exhausted, and what's happening now is affecting our economies, our alliances, our daily lives. This stopped being your problem a long while ago. The rest of the world doesn't hate the US. It is looking the way a family looks at a loved one who has been destroying themselves with drugs for years. You warned them, they told you to mind your own business. You tried to help, they took that help and kept destroying themselves. At some point, you stop waiting for things to change. You grieve what you thought they were going to be, you protect your own household, and you hope distantly that one day they will find their way back. But you have stopped betting on it. Please try to understand that. Go talk death.
Well, yeah, this one. Yeah, I might finish listening to that one. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Oh, I'm going to delete that tab. F off. You know, when I pause something and I don't want to listen to it until later, I expect it to pause. Amazingly. What's this one? Oh, Gerald Celente. Yeah, very good. I've listened to Gerald Celente quite a lot. Yeah, I don't know if I want to. I'll do this tomorrow. This one is. I can't remember now. The West's hypocrisy has been exposed to the whole world. I only listened to the first 10 minutes of this. Let's share this tab instead. Remind myself what do I need. Isaac's going to go live in an hour, I think. I think it's an hour, 11:30.
Pretty much everyone around the world can see that Western foreign policy is extremely hypocritical. Western governments love to talk about democracy and human rights,
Yeah.
but they're constantly waging wars. The United States has carried out military interventions in the majority of the countries on Earth. And when the US government bombs a foreign country, like most recently Venezuela and Iran, and before that, Syria and Yemen and Libya, European governments almost always support these blatant US wars of aggression. And don't even get me started about Gaza, where European governments joined the US in giving Israel tens of billions of dollars of weapons and military equipment to completely destroy Gaza, to bomb women and children.
Well, we're
And
going to
yet
make
these
it into a
same
car
Western
park.
governments constantly lecture the rest of the world and wag their fingers, lecturing other countries about democracy and human rights. And in recent years, Western governments have popularized the phrase, the rules-based international order. And they never clearly define what they mean by the so-called rules-based order, because in reality, it's Western governments that make those rules, and then they violate them whenever it's politically convenient. But Donald Trump has taken off the mask and shown the true face of Western imperialism. The Trump administration is openly attacking international law. Trump himself said, quote, "I don't need international law," end quote. And he said that the power of the US empire is only limited by, quote, "my own morality," end quote. And now Trump is not only targeting the global South, but also targeting Western allies with his very aggressive foreign policy, which has exposed the extreme hypocrisy of all of this. Because when the US was bombing countries in the Middle East and West Asia and bombing countries in Africa and Latin America, most Western governments went along with it. They had no problem. They were junior partners of imperialism working together with the US to fight against the global South. But now that the US is targeting them, now that Trump is threatening to colonize Greenland, which is an autonomous territory of Denmark, a European country and a NATO ally, and now that Trump is also talking about annexing Canada and making it the so-called 51st state, this has forced some Western government officials to say the truth that pretty much everyone in the rest of the world has known for many decades, but the illusion is gone. We can all see very clearly what is now happening. And the perfect example of this is a speech that was delivered by Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, at the 2026 World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Corporate media outlets heaped praise on Carney, saying that he delivered such a brave speech, acknowledging that the so-called rules-based order is dead.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself.
Western media outlets portrayed the Canadian Prime Minister as a brave hero who was standing up to Donald Trump. But what they conveniently left out was the deep hypocrisy of this speech. Because Mark Carney's remarks were not motivated by altruism and love for freedom and democracy, and because Canada is so concerned about international law and the violation of the sovereignty of other countries. No, this speech was entirely self-interested. What's happening is these very same Western imperialist governments that supported US hegemony for decades, as Carney admitted in his speech.
And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods.
These other Western countries were standing up to Donald Trump. But what they conveniently left out was the deep hypocrisy of this speech. Because Mark Carney's remarks were not motivated by altruism and love for freedom and democracy, and because Canada is so concerned about international law and the violation of the sovereignty of other countries. No, this speech was entirely self-interested. What's happening is these very same Western imperialist governments that supported U.S. hegemony for decades, as Carney admitted in his speech.
And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods.
These other Western countries were totally complicit in the crimes of the U.S. empire. But now that they are being targeted by the U.S. empire, they're no longer complicit in these crimes. They're the new targets of these crimes, and they're terrified. So the reason Carney gave the speech is it was a call to action. It was a call for other so-called middle powers like Canada and European countries to unify, to unite, to try to defend themselves as the U.S. empire goes completely rogue.
The middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
These so-called middle powers are extremely scared because they know they're not superpowers and they can't defend themselves against the U.S. military. And they can see that Trump is just attacking all international multilateral institutions. So they're trying to work together to implement protective measures to stop this crazy U.S. rogue regime from running them over.
The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself.
Canada's Prime Minister Carney also admitted that the so-called rules-based international order that Western governments love to bloviate about was always deeply hypocritical, and that international law was not actually applied when powerful countries like the U.S. empire invaded countries and violated their sovereignty, like how the U.S. invaded Iraq in 2003 in blatant violation of international law. Carney admitted that there were always these deep double standards.
We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful.
However, Canada's Prime Minister acknowledged that Western middle powers went along with this unjust, hypocritical imperialist system because it benefited them. He used the term American hegemony, global dominance by the U.S. empire, and said that it benefited some of these other Western imperialist powers like Canada, and they were provided with collective security in the form of NATO, led by the U.S. empire, as well as what he called a stable financial system.
And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes.
Now, the financial system has not been stable at all, but Mark Carney previously worked on Wall Street for the U.S. investment bank Goldman Sachs, and then he was a central banker who ran the central banks of Canada and England. So he's been a beneficiary of the U.S.-dominated global financial system, the heart of which is located in Wall Street, and the blood in the veins of that system is the U.S. dollar. And this system is now coming apart. We see more and more countries de-dollarizing. U.S. hegemony is weakening, which is precisely why the U.S. empire is becoming so aggressive to try to desperately hold on to global dominance, to drag the world back to the unipolar era of U.S. global dominance. But this is why Canada's Prime Minister Carney says that this is not just a transition, it's a rupture.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
He admits that Canada and other Western middle powers went along with this imperialist system and supported the exploitation of the global South, the global majority, because it benefited them. He said, quote, "This fiction was useful," end quote, but then he complained that, quote, "this bargain no longer works," end quote. So previously, Canada helped the US empire to exploit the global South in countries like Haiti. Canada participated in the colonial military occupation of Haiti, or in Libya. In 2011, US-led NATO forces destroyed the government of Libya, and Canada played an important role in that imperial war. And of course, when we're talking about Canada's complicity in imperialism, we have to talk about Gaza, because the horrific crimes against humanity carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people were only possible due to the significant support that Israel has gotten from Western governments. Not only the US government, which under both Joe Biden, the Democrat, and Donald Trump, the Republican, the US has given Israel tens of billions of dollars of weapons and military aid and other forms of support. But it wasn't just the US. Canada has also been selling weapons to Israel that have been used to carry out these war crimes. And a poll of Canadians found that a slight majority of the population, 55%, opposes Canada's weapon sales to Israel. And due to the massive public outrage and protests in Canada, the Canadian government was forced to claim that it was going to stop selling weapons to Israel. At least that's what it promised. And this was in 2024 under the previous Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who's from the same centrist Liberal Party of the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney. But in reality, that wasn't true. The Canadian government lied. It claimed it would stop selling weapons to Israel, but Canada's state media outlet CBC admitted in 2025 that Canada has continued sending weapons to Israel that have been used against the Palestinian people. And this is why there have still been protests going on in Canada. Well, Mark Carney is going to Davos and bloviating on the international stage about how he's standing up to Trump and defending the rules-based order. Meanwhile, Canada continues to send weapons to Israel through the US. So in this way, Carney is still allied with Trump. And it is true that around the world, Canada has a much better reputation than the US, because the US is a crazy rogue regime that is constantly invading countries and bombing them and imposing sanctions and organizing coups and carrying out regime change operations. It's a crazy empire. But Canada has very often been complicit in the US empire's worst crimes. And yet many people often don't know about Canada's role. It's been much better at whitewashing its image. But if you look at recent votes at the United Nations, you can see that Canada sometimes joins the US in voting against the rest of the world. Like in 2023 in the UN General Assembly, there was a vote on a resolution that called for supporting the Palestine Refugees Agency, UNRWA. 156 countries supported it. The 6 countries that voted against were the US, Israel, Canada, and 3 tiny island countries. Similarly, every year at the UN General Assembly, there is a vote on a resolution that condemns Israel's illegal settlements in occupied Palestinian territory and the occupied Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory, according to international law. And in 2023, once again, Canada joined the US in voting against the rest of the world. It was the US, Canada, Hungary, Israel, and 3 small island nations voting against the rest of the world and voting against international law. Similarly, when there was a vote in the UN General Assembly in 2024 calling to admit Palestine as a full member state of the UN, Canada and many European countries abstained in the vote, again, going against the will of the vast majority of the international community. But it's not just on issues related to Israel-Palestine. Canada and the West more broadly often vote against the rest of the world, the global North against the global South. In 2023, there was a UN General Assembly vote condemning sanctions, which are known as unilateral coercive measures, which violate international law and they violate human rights. And Canada joined the US and pretty much all of Europe in voting in support of sanctions that violate international law. And by the way, this all happened when Canada had this centrist liberal prime minister, Justin Trudeau. If you go back to the previous conservative, the right-wing leaders like Stephen Harper, Canada was even more pro-US. And let's not forget that when the US invaded Iraq in 2003 in an illegal war of aggression, Stephen Harper, the leader of Canada's Conservative Party, openly supported the US-led invasion of Iraq. Now, Harper at that time was not prime minister. There was a liberal prime minister, Jean Chrétien. But in 2006, Harper did become prime minister. He formed a conservative government in Canada and openly supported these illegal US wars of aggression. So this kind of blatant hypocrisy is nothing new for Canada. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney talks about the rules-based order, but Canada was always a willing participant and accomplice in this US-led imperialist system. But now the Canadian government is very scared, rightfully, because the US empire has turned its sights on Canada. Again, I already pointed out how Trump is threatening to colonize Canada and make it the so-called 51st state of the United States. In fact, what's crazy is the Financial Times reported that the US government has been supporting far-right separatist groups inside Canada. More specifically, US State Department officials have been repeatedly meeting with leaders of the separatist movement in Alberta in Western Canada, which uncoincidentally is a wealthy, oil-rich province, and Trump wants to exploit the province's natural resources. So the Trump administration has been openly supporting these fringe far-right extremists. And by the way, they are asking for $500 billion from the US in order to bankroll their separatist movement. So the US government is blatantly interfering in Canada's internal affairs and violating the sovereignty of its northern neighbor. And this is why Mark Carney warned in his Davos speech that middle powers like Canada want to be at the table so they're not on the menu.
The middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
So this is why Mark Carney is so angry, because his argument is the whole point was the Western powers were supposed to unite as imperialist partners in crime. The Europeans and the Canadians were supposed to be the little brothers of the US empire, but now this ferocious, mad US empire is targeting its own allies and threatening to colonize them as well. Just as Trump is threatening to colonize Greenland, which is an autonomous territory of Denmark, which is a member of NATO. And this has infuriated the European Union because Europe's argument is just like Canada's. We were supposed to be your imperialist allies. Together, we were supposed to exploit the global south. In fact, France's multimillionaire banker turned president, Emmanuel Macron, who's quite similar politically to Mark Carney in Canada. These are bankers, and they're not in any way left-wing. These are center-right neoliberal technocrats and imperialists, and yet now that they're being targeted by the US empire, suddenly they're defenders of sovereignty after they've been violating the sovereignty of the global south for so many, not just decades, for centuries. But anyway, the point is that Emmanuel Macron, the French president, sent this text message to Trump in which he said, quote, "We are totally in line on Syria. We can do great things on Iran. I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland," end quote. So the message is clear. The European middle powers want to reunite with the US empire in order to exploit Syria and Iran and the global south countries. They want to go back to this great imperialist bargain, as Mark Carney put it.
This bargain no longer works.
But the US empire is entering a whole new stage of imperialism where it's now going to target its own so-called allies, not just the global south. Because again, the goal of the US empire is total global hegemony, to exploit all of the countries on earth, all of their workers, to exploit all of their natural resources, to enrich billionaire oligarchs on Wall Street and Silicon Valley. Donald Trump has made that as clear as day. And this is why the US government is waging a full frontal assault on international law. Trump is making it clear that the US empire does not care about international law. Again, that's not new, but saying it very explicitly. And he's even going a step further and saying that he's going to physically expand the territory of the US empire by colonizing foreign countries and directly attacking the fundamental concept of sovereignty. Now, sovereignty is the most important sacred principle of international politics. And this goes back hundreds of years, well before the creation of the United Nations after World War II. The idea that a government has sovereignty over its territory that should not be violated goes back to 1648, to the Westphalian system, established by the so-called Peace of Westphalia, when the European powers came together and signed peace treaties ending the 30 Years' War. Of course, the European powers were deeply hypocritical. They were already colonial powers. They denied sovereignty to their colonies in Latin America, and they went on to colonize most of the world in Asia and Africa. So yes, it is very important to emphasize that there's always been deep hypocrisy in these Western claims to support sovereignty. They only really cared about their own sovereignty, not the sovereignty of the foreign countries that they were colonizing. But after World War II, when the European empires destroyed themselves, and also the Japanese empire, these empires fought in the most brutal war in human history, and the weakening and the destruction of those empires led to the victory of anti-colonial movements across the global South. There were waves of national liberation struggles that overthrew their colonizers all across Asia and Africa in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And even though the US-led Western imperialist powers continued to try to destabilize foreign governments and overthrow them and meddle in their internal affairs, the CIA carried out dozens of coups all around the world and regime change operations. Certainly, it was endlessly hypocritical. But at the very least, the concept of sovereignty was written into international law, and the Western imperialist powers were not able to actually colonize more territory, to physically take control of more territory. The US empire is trying to drag the world back to 19th century style European colonialism and to destroy any semblance of international law. So this is why these Western so-called middle powers like Canada, which have been complicit in this US-led imperialist system for so long, this is why they are now desperately seeking alternatives. This is why many European leaders have been traveling to China and trying to improve relations with China. And this is why Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, took a trip to Beijing in January to meet with President Xi Jinping and to come to a new trade agreement. Because Canada recognizes that it is much too dependent on the US and it has to diversify its foreign relations. And yet previously, the Canadian government always criticized China over so-called democracy and human rights and all of that propagandistic nonsense. But now that it's no longer convenient, Canada has totally abandoned that superficial rhetoric, which shows that it never actually believed in this nonsense about democracy and human rights. It was simply public relations, and as soon as it became politically convenient, Canada simply abandoned the pretense and is now trying to act more explicitly in its national interest to defend itself. But I'm very skeptical about this supposed pivot. Once again, I think it's mostly for PR, because Donald Trump has been openly threatening Canada, and Trump said that if Canada signs a trade deal with China, he will punish Canada with 100% tariffs. And immediately after Trump made those threats, what did Carney do? He took a few steps back and said, no, don't worry. We're not going to actually sign a free trade deal with China, which shows once again that a lot of this is for public relations, but rhetoric doesn't actually matter. What truly matters is action, not words, action. And I have no doubt that Canada would like to diversify its trade relations, But this is going to be very, very difficult. Canada is in an extremely precarious situation because nearly 80% of Canada's exports go to the United States. That is absolutely crazy. And about half of Canada's imports come from the United States. This means that Trump's threats of tariffs on Canada could devastate the Canadian economy. Trump is weaponizing that dependency. Now, if you look at what exactly Canada exports, its biggest export is crude petroleum, oil. Canada is a major oil producer, and the US actually imports a lot of Canada's crude, even though the US is the world's #1 oil producer, because Canada produces a lot of heavy crude, whereas the US mostly produces light crude. So it is potentially possible for Canada to redirect some of those exports from the US and instead to export those goods to China. However, that is much easier said than done. The reality is that most of Canada's oil pipelines go to the United States because of this structure of economic dependency that goes back many decades. Canada does have one pipeline that goes to the Western Pacific coast. That's called the Trans Mountain Pipeline. But as the name suggests, it goes through this very mountainous area in Alberta and British Columbia, these two western provinces of Canada. So if Canada wanted to make new pipelines going to the Pacific coast in order to export that oil to China, they would have to build more pipelines through this very mountainous terrain. And obviously, that is quite difficult. Now, in addition to oil, another important product that Canada exports a lot of is cars. But these are not cars being produced by Canadian companies. These are cars being produced primarily by US companies that have factories inside Canada. And this is why Canada's Prime Minister Carney signed this deal with China, lifting Canadian tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, allowing China to sell EVs in the Canadian market, because Canada is also seeking investment from Chinese companies like BYD, which is now the world's #1 producer of electric vehicles. It overtook Tesla, because from Canada's perspective, they don't really care what the company is. None of these companies is Canadian. Whether or not it's a US company or a Chinese company, they don't care. What Canada wants is the investment and the jobs created in the local economy. But this is, of course, angering the US government and US car companies because they don't want to deal with Chinese competition. This is why the US government put 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, because US car companies know they simply cannot compete with Chinese automakers. Chinese EVs are much better quality, and they cost significantly less than US cars, especially than cars produced by Tesla. So for Canada, it's a no-brainer, but the US is deathly afraid of Chinese competition, which is why the US government is now once again threatening Canada and telling Canada that it needs to reverse its decision to allow Chinese EVs in its domestic market. So again, what all of this shows is that Canada has now recognized that its extreme dependency on the US is a major vulnerability, and it is desperately seeking alternatives. This is why Carney took this trip to Beijing and tried to improve relations with China. It was the first visit by a Canadian prime minister to China in nearly a decade. And this is also why the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, likewise visited China and met with China's President Xi Jinping also in January, just a few weeks after Carney visited. And then this came just after France's President Emmanuel Macron took another trip to Beijing in December 2025. Because these same European leaders that love to bloviate about democracy and human rights and all of that nonsense, they showed that they actually don't care about that. It's just propaganda, it's rhetoric, it's public relations. But now that they are concerned about the US empire turning against them, abandoning its erstwhile accomplices and junior partners in crime, and now seeking to colonize European territory and potentially even colonize Canada, of course, these Western so-called middle powers are totally terrified and they are desperately seeking alternatives. If you want to learn more about how Europe is trying to improve its relations with China, because European leaders like Canada have recognized that they are way too dependent on the US economically, technologically, militarily, and in terms of energy. If you want to learn more about that, you should check out this other video that I did here at Geopolitical Economy Report. I will link to that in the description below. On that note, I'm going to conclude. I am Ben Norton. I am the editor-in-chief of Geopolitical Economy Report. I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Please like and subscribe. Please share this. I will see you all next time.
Naruto Shippuden, Ultimate Ninja Storm, the trilogy. We're going to go through the first ninja, basically hope, love, faith, and
Yeah, I'm not going to listen to that garbage. Playing PlayStation games, that is up to him, you know, but I'm definitely not interested in that. It's not really the kind of thing, but it's definitely not the sort of thing I want to do. Look at the adverts. Get away. Rude. Why can't I stop these adverts coming through? Oh, shut up. Nobody wants to know about your gut or your diet or what you're shoving down your gullet. Nobody's interested. I certainly am. Oh, I've heard. Yeah, I've heard it twice now. Oh, you can't do anything on the internet without it just being annoying. I mean, let's have a listen to Gerald Celente. I used to listen to Gerald Celente years ago. I don't know why I stopped, actually. I didn't sort of keep up with him because of financial stuff. It never really floated me boat. I mean, it's just a big subject to get involved in and to learn or to understand, isn't it? The dog's barking now, yeah. Yeah, so, Isaac's doing a live stream of his, what they call it. Oh, I can't remember. Who cares? Who cares, really? So, Gerald Celente isn't too happy.
Welcome back, everybody, to Neutrality Studies. Today, for the first time, with Gerald Celente, an American trend forecaster and publisher of the Trends Journal. Gerald, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for saying yes to this. And you've been somebody who's been working for all your life with markets and with trends of where things are going. And I would really wanted to pick your brain about what you think especially the Iran war is doing to the markets. And as we speak today on your morning, June 19th, how are the markets reacting to the memorandum of understanding that the US and Iran just did yesterday?
Very positive. And again, tracking trends is the understanding of where we are, how we got here to see where we're going. You go back before the Iran war, you saw the equity markets in the United States going down because of the fear of the private equity groups and the people wanting to pull their money out because AI is wiping out a lot of the smaller software and a lot of software companies. And people wanted to get their money out. Things were going terrible before that happened. And the war happened and things changed. And again, we only go by the facts. We're political atheists, by the way. We don't take sides on anything. And you look at things for the way they are, not the way you want them to be. So you go back and again, by the facts. Trump said on March 1st, that the war's going to end in 4 or 5 weeks. And then on March 11th, he said, we won. I don't like to say we won too early, but we won. But they didn't win. But every time I'm mentioning this, the same thing with this guy who is the energy secretary, Chris Wright, or I call him Chris Wrong. He kept BS. They BS'd about the United States sending naval ships through the Straits of Hormuz to bring tankers through. It wasn't true at all. I'm mentioning this because it manipulates the markets.
Yeah.
And that's what you have going on now is market manipulation. And then you have to look at the facts. You have 3 companies, State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock. Google it up. They own in value about 88% of the S&P 500. All right, 3 companies. Then you look at the data. 1% in America owns 54% of the stock markets. 1%. Then you put the 10% into it, it's 93%. So you have a rigged market. They're going to do everything they can to keep propping these things up. Once upon a time, there was this Italian guy by the name of Mussolini. The merger of state and corporate powers is fascism. And that's what you have. You look at now how Trump is buying up parts of companies like Intel. Oh, did you see Intel stock just went up? Oh, yeah, we just did a deal with them, one after another. The company after company, they're merging, and the corporations own the country. It's as simple as that. So there's no reality in the markets. The PE ratios are overvalued, and we believe there's going to be a dot-com bust. Again, we only go by the facts. And by the way, to make this perfectly clear, when I say that I'm a political atheist, I don't believe in any of the political systems. To me, they're crime syndicates. And this is one of the shirts that we sell at the Trends Journal.
A politician to tell me, oh, wow.
To tell me what to do. All right?
Well,
yeah. So just to make it clear, that's the system. Now, I'm mentioning this because going back to AI, 25 years ago, Bill Clinton brought China into the World Trade Organization. Western nations flooded over there to get cheap labor. He gave China all the heavy industry and high tech that they never had. You go back to up to about 2015, BMW, Volkswagen, all these companies, Ford, General Motors, their sales are booming, booming, booming. Oh, everything booming in China. Not anymore. Who's the biggest exporter? Who's the biggest of anything in EVs? China. Now I'm going back to the dot-com bust. Before Bill Clinton brought them in, 10% of Chinese 18-year-olds went to college. Now, nearly 70%.
Oh, wow.
And unlike in the United States, where they're going to college to take courses in transgender studies and other things like that, they're very advanced technologically, scientifically, and AI. In America, I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. You take the subway in New York City, it's a night in Calcutta. They got a thing called Amtrak. How about Amcrap? I'm up in Kingston, New York. This was the first capital of New York State, the third Dutch settlement. I'm 4.5 hours if I could drive to Montreal. My friend just went across the river. There's a place called Rhinecliff. Took Amcrap from Rhinecliff to Montreal, 10 hours each way.
Oh, wow.
The country's rotting in front of us. Hey, go to China. Poof. Oh, you were in Japan. Poof. Not here. Boom, 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 boom. The roads, boom, 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 boom. The whole country's rotting in front of our eyes.
So where is this coming from? Where did America take a turn to deindustrialization, to the degrading of all of the infrastructure? And as Jimmy Dore usually says, under every bridge, you've got homeless and they don't even fix the bridges anymore. When did that happen? Because once upon a time, there was an America that actually wanted to work And of course, the first large railway networks were all built in America. And then that thinking went away. And I have friends who all break it down to basically financialization of the economy. Where do you put this degeneration of the?
It's again, just to make this clear, I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate as a young guy. I used to work on major political campaigns in Westchester County, the richest county in America. I designed and instructed a course at St. John's University, American Politics and Campaign Technology, how to run political campaigns. I put on a brunch with Ronald Reagan when I was 30 years old with 16 of our board of directors. I've been with presidents, prime ministers, and princes. It's a crime syndicate. They're low-life pieces of arrogant crap in a country near you. You got it? Take a trip to the UK. You like out of his mind little Stammer? How about the Catzon Macron? How about the guy in Germany, Merz? You look at the poll ratings of these people, they're under 20%, all three of them.
Hey, just a very quick note. The best way to support this channel is by signing up for my free Substack. You can also help with a paid subscription there, or you can get some of our new merch on neutralitystudies.com. Links below. See you there. Yeah, but Merz is such a wonderful example. Used to head BlackRock over there in Germany. I mean, it directly related to the money crime syndicate, as you put it, and makes it to the top of the political food chain. And now is going to be responsible basically for riding Europe into a full all-out war with the Russians. How did this encrusted elite come to dominate countries that once upon a time used to have a sane foreign policy?
Again, you're asking me why the United States is rotting. You look at one of the covers of our Trends Journal a couple of weeks ago. China trumps the U.S., and we put Trumps with Trump's name, Trump. The business of China is business, and the business of America is war.
Yeah.
All right?
And they're no good at it.
I'm the same age as Trump. I grew up during the Vietnam War. I got drafted Furmans like he did. But I launched a movement called Occupy Peace at peace rallies every year. I know the day. There's this cat by the name of Smedley Butler.
Yeah. War's a racket.
War's a racket. Yep. He goes on to say, war's a racket, it always has been. Is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. You got it? America destroyed itself with all these wars. Hey, you elect me for president? I promise you, I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars, all right? I'm Trump. I'm giving you the crap back then. Hey, I'll go back to last February, all right? I'm going to cut the defense budget by $500 billion, all right? Oh, no, now this year we're going to increase it by $500 billion.
But here we have a contradiction, because in order to do war, you need an industrial base to implement it. And the United States hollowed out that industrial base and basically made sure it's being transferred to China very efficiently. So is it the system then, what Marx said in the end, the capitalists are going to sell us that was Lenin. The capitalists are going to sell us the noose at which we're going to hang them. Is that's what's happening at the moment with this capitalist core of the West?
Of the world. Look, again, before I go on, and remind me to do that, but I want to go back to, before I forget, about China and the dot-com bust. China's going to lead the world in AI. Mm-hmm. Trends are born, they grow, they mature, they reach old age, and then they die. You don't invest all your money in the infants that were born in 2022. Go back to 2025 when DeepSeek came out. Oh, DeepSeek? Oh, yeah, you saw NVIDIA's stock go down, what, $600 billion in one day? Oh, it got back up. China's going to lead the world in AI. And AI is the future. Love it, hate it, it's what is. So going back, that's where they're going. That's where that's going. Now go to the question you just asked me before that I said I would answer. You just
the why it is that if war is a racket and war is the business of the United States is proving right now that it's becoming bad at its core business. With the way the Iran war went, with the way that the United States is actually running out of munitions, of missiles, the capitalist system, which then creates a military-industrial complex, which sells weapons at a tremendous amount of money, but actually only shells out pretty little of those things. I mean, that seems to be working against this militarized system that the United States has created. Why is that?
Because again, it's the military-industrial complex that runs the country. Once upon a time, there was this president by the name of Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, and 2-term president. He said, the military-industrial complex is robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. And here we are. I am so heartbroken to see the rotting of this nation. You have no idea. Once upon a time, people all over the world wanted to come to America. Not anymore. It's a crap show. The style's gone. The vibe is gone. Again, the politicians are politicians. They're crime syndicates.
But
they're only interested in themselves.
But the markets keep producing profits for these people, aren't they?
Yep. Again, going back, this is why I also wanted to mention about the systems going on. It's not only the West that they're doing it in. What's going on in India? Oh, the cockroach party. Oh, yeah, Gen Z, huh? Gen Z? Yeah. How come? They got no future. What's going on in Nepal? Oh, they overthrew the government. Gen Z. Again, I'm a guy, Bronx, New Yorker originally, right? I'm a New Yorker. They elect a guy by the name of Mandani. Nobody ever heard of this guy. A Muslim in the most heavily populated Jewish city in the world outside of Israel. How come? Gen Z. They're broke. They're busted. The Gen Z revolution is happening because this is what we're at now with Off With Their Heads 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
The billionaires are getting richer. Everybody else is getting poorer. They have no future. When I was a young man, there were things in America called grocery stores, drug stores, shoe stores, hardware stores, fish stores, clothing stores, all chains now. The big zone everything. The young people have no future. What, are you going to get a job at Walmart? Nah, I think I'll get one at Home Depot. Lowe's is better than that. What, are you kidding? There used to be as a kid growing up, my Aunt Grace and Uncle Dominic had a fish store in the Bronx. My Uncle Jimmy and Aunt Ed had one at Rego Park in Queens. Another one in Jackson Heights in Queens. My Uncle Frankie and Aunt Ida and my Uncle Mary and Aunt Rose had a fish store in Flushing. All right, middle class. And my Uncle Al had a butcher shop in the Bronx. That's the way it used to be. No more. The big zone everything. They control the whole country. Look at the elections. Hey, I'm Elon Musk. Here's $250 million, all right? Hey, I'm at Marion Adelson. Here's another couple $100 million, all right?
So what is this leading to? What is the trend? Colonel Douglas MacGregor says and is convinced that the United States cannot get around an actual violent conflict. Are you on the same? Do you have the same outlook? I mean, this must lead to some form of people on the street with pitchforks and so on.
Again, it's Off With Their Heads 2.0, and it's not only in the United States. It's going on global. This Gen Z revolution. They have no future. They got nothing. I know a young guy, very brilliant and high tech. He said he has done over 1,000 tries to get jobs and tech jobs. He's only gotten one interview.
Devastating. The devastating realities for anyone below 25. It's like, you can't. What do you do then with the best high school and college with the best college degree? So, but shouldn't we expect that the people who make the most money out of that, make the most profit out of this system, that they would actually have an incentive to try to say that, okay, we at least need a minimum kind of prosperity for the people on the lowest class, so that they do not take the pitchforks, because the Cayman Islands are not a defensible position, right? That kind of thinking, but that seems not to be here, is it?
No, it never has been. Normally, they're billionaires. Once upon a time, the tax to these people was 90% when Eisenhower, during those times. They pay nothing. They pay nothing. The facts are there. And they get all these government deals. It's a crime syndicate. Again, was no relationship to Wall Street and Main Street. Again, and by the way, things changed so dramatically after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Restaurants used to stop serving, but I'm in the Hudson Valley, 10 o'clock at night, now 9 o'clock at night. Streets are empty. Every restaurant owner I know tells me how bad business is. One guy was telling me, yeah, on Friday and Saturday, we used to do about $12,000, $15,000. He said, now we're doing about $3,000 and $5,000. One after another.
How long before this collapses? How long before something really big happens that's going to lead to actual, to people on the streets?
It won't become a reality until the equity markets crash. That's when it becomes a reality.
When and for what reason will that happen? Like the AI bubble bursting?
Yeah. When the markets crash, then it becomes a reality. It doesn't become a reality until then.
The last time the markets crashed badly in 2008, what we've seen is mass bailouts of the very people who did that, whose crimes this was. The whole ninja idea and the splitting up of all of these debt obligations. I mean, all of these crappy ideas. But everybody who was involved in that got bailed out, and that's kind of what this capitalist system does. Don't you think that it will just be the same of that one, another $1 trillion down the money drain?
It's not the capitalist system, it's a fascist system. According to Levy Institute at Bard College, the Federal Reserve bailed out the banksters that caused this thing $29 trillion.
Oh my God.
29 trillion. And by the way, the guy at Levy Institute at Bard College, the guy's name was Botstein. That was one of the Epstein guys. Mm-hmm. They just got rid of him. Anyway, going back to it, yes, they're going to do everything they can to come up with more cheap money backed by nothing and printed on nothing. The real debt in America is not $40 trillion. It's more like $120 trillion when you put in Social Security and all the other, and you don't have to believe me, even Fortune magazine talks about it. So they're going to, now the importance of this is that the more they do this, the greater the beginning of the death of the dollar. Much of the world has had enough of the United States geopolitical and financial hegemony. BRICS and everybody else. It's going to be the death of the dollar. That means that the deeper the dollar goes, the higher precious metal prices are going to spike. That's what we see happening. So yes, they're going to bail it out, quantitative easing. Who made up this crap? Again, I had 4 kernels right there. We call the dot-com bust in autumn of 1999. Said it bust by the second quarter 2000. I thought things would crash again in 2012. They didn't teach me about quantitative easing in Economics 101 at graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
They'll make up any crap they want.
I mean, to keep it stable, that's the kind of the job of the Fed, right? But the underlying system, if that one is rotten, at some point there's going to be an end even to what the Fed can do. And exactly. I think if I understand you correctly, then you're saying that that point is near.
Yes. And it'll be worthless. Be worthless. We are heading, this is not going to be the Great Depression. It's going to be the greatest depression, and it's worldwide. Oh, did you see the data that just came out of the UK? Oh, they had a negative GDP in the last quarter. Oh, how about the Eurozone? Oh, yeah, they just had negative GDP, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to be, it's not going to be stagflation. It's going to be dragflation. Economies are going to be dragged down, and inflation is going to go up.
So do you read the war in Ukraine and the Ukraine-Russia war and the Iran war? Do you read them under this in this context, are they a distraction, or are they an attempt, especially the Iran war, at turning things around and saving the petrodollar or something?
If this Iran, by the way, as we just went on the air, they say that Hezbollah and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire.
Yeah. But usually a ceasefire for Israel means the other one stops shooting while you keep killing them. So yeah. But
Yeah.
that one aside, yeah.
So, yeah, one of my books, Trend Tracking, a lot better than Megatrends, Time Magazine. I say how I became a trend forecaster when the Iran conflict broke out in the late 1970s. 99.99, this is when I became a political atheist. Jimmy Carter, another clown boy who gave us Mujahideen. Yeah, we got to stop those Russians from taking out the Taliban. Oh, gave us Osama bin Laden. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, the guy that deregulated the airline industry when there were hundreds of airlines and now 4 run the whole thing. Oh, the Jimmy Carter who made the beginning of interstate banking when banks were only intrastate, when Bank of America was only in California. Yeah, and the big that little slime ball. And Brzezinski, may he rot in hell, that murderous slime ball. Jimmy Carter comes back from Iran, spending New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife. Gets off the helicopter, all the little boys in their costumes salute. And Carter says, right here, the Shah is the island of stability in the Middle East. And the Bronx used to say, bullshit has its own sound. I said, this thing's going down. I started playing the gold and oil futures markets. I put $5,000 bet into each one. And by 1980, I brought up to almost $750,000. Again, I was a young guy, lost most of it too. But here's what happened. 99.99% of the people had no idea how the United States and the UK overthrew the democratically elected government of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in 1953.
Yeah.
Because Mossadegh had the goal to say, hey, that oil does not belong to Anglo-Iranian Oil, better known today as BP, or Standard Oil, better known today as ExxonMobil. It belongs to the Iranian people. No, it doesn't. That little slime ball, may he rot in hell, a fat, ugly, cigar-smoking slob, Winston Churchill, who gave us World War I and World War II, they didn't release the telegrams until middle of 2000 between him and Kermit Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt's great-grandson, that the United States and the UK have to overthrow the government. It's there in telegrams.
Yeah.
So when the revolution happened, I knew it was real. Now, going back to the war, I've been writing since then. If the United States goes to war against Iran, there's no way in the world that they'll win. They're very advanced. These are the Persians. They're advanced scientifically, technologically, and militarily. And to make it 1,000% clear, you got that head shit guy spewing out his crap. Hey, we got the toughest military in the world. You haven't won a war since World War II. And you wouldn't have won that one without the Russians. And you couldn't beat the Vietnamese. You only killed 3.5 million of them and killed about 250,000 American boys and millions poisoned with Agent Orange. You couldn't beat the Iraqis. And you swallowed the crap spewing out of the mouth of that little nobody, little Georgie Bush, another spoiled daddy's boy. We're going to get that guy Osama bin Laden dead or alive. 92% of the people supported the Afghan war, the longest war in American history, and you couldn't win that one. What makes you think you're going to win the Iran war? Now, my fear is they're going to go nuclear.
So you don't trust what just came out. This is not going to be de-escalation. This is just a short pause button in order to rally the markets, in order to cash in, and then right back to it. I mean, or right now is the moment to buy all the stocks and everything you want, and then hit the button and prices go up and cash in. Is that going to be it?
That's it. Game. Again, you know the Samson option.
Yeah,
Israel's Samson option. They say if they lose, they go nuclear. Mm-hmm. You're saying it. It's there. I'm not making it up. And Netanyahu is going to do everything he can the elections are coming up in October to stay in office. The longest running prime minister of Israel. Oh, by the way, his son's in Miami. I forgot. He ain't out there fighting, right? Yeah.
No. I mean, fighting is for the peasant class, right? That's it. You said to die. So tell me, what do you think can be done realistically in order? I mean, we can't go on like this. And by us, I mean basically what Richard Sakwa calls the political West, what others call the collective West. This conglomerate of crime syndicates. What can we do against them?
Number one, I tell people, one of the books I worked on also many years ago, before it was even popular, was Natural Healing back in the 1980s. To get in the best shape you can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, says Samuel Adams, one of the founding fathers. This Gen Z revolution is very important. The way it has to change now, and it could change, you have to unite the young people. And it's all social media. That is the way of the world. I read every article I could on how and why Mandani beat